you're dating now, right? You're single and you're dating. Yeah. When you're looking for somebody, like, do you try to figure out if they get enough sleep?
We have this sort of joke, right? Because it's like I'm this undiagnosing sleep apnea, right? Where I'll be like, have you been checked at all for sleep? And they're like, really? Like, that's what we're going to talk about. We know poor sleep affects mood. And so,
oh God,
you know, if they're very, if they're very crabby or negative, that's not gonna.
Honey, did you get enough sleep last
night? So true. Just asking.
Yeah, just asking. You're watching Chic Innovator. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It's free.
My name is Dr. Kimberly Lemke, and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and a sleep science coach and a wellness consultant.
Wow. That's a lot.
A lot of things to say
here. Oh, my goodness.
Thanks for having me.
So, Dr. Lemke, or Kim as I know you. So we met. Oh my goodness, now it's been how many years? 4 years ago?
I think
right?
so.
It was in Florida.
Yes.
We were both getting an award.
Yes.
That was a fun, event.
And that was so fun.
Yeah, it was so fun. And, I got to meet you, and I fell in love with her. She's amazing. And you were one of the few that was there from Illinois. There weren't that many of us from Illinois. There were women from all over the country, and a lot of them were getting awards, and it was exciting, to go out there and get an award, but then came back here, and then so much has happened in between, right?
Yes.
And we haven't really had a chance to catch up as much. I know you just came to Runway Latinx. Thank you for being there.
Oh, it was fabulous.
You're there with your daughter.
Energy. Yes.
And got to meet your daughter, who's going to be a big designer someday.
Yes.
How old is she now?
She's 14, just turned 14. Yes. Thank you for she loved it. I mean, it was just such a beautiful experience.
Yeah, it was
all of it.
It was great to have her, because we went backstage and to see her eyes, and then she got to meet one of the biggest designers. Frankly, he's going to be one of the biggest on the planet, Eric Bendanya.
Yes.
Amazing. He's shown at the Met Gala, has had just come back from Dubai Fashion Week, so her eyes were that big, and
he was just so kind and gracious too. He was, just to meet her, and he said hi to her a few times in there. Just a kind man too.
Yeah, very kind. And actually, one of the things we're talking about doing a little bit more of, he and I and some other designers, is really trying to impact young lives more. Trying to give them a big picture of what really fashion can be.
Yes.
Because the sky is the limit,
yes.
With the right tools, right?
Yes.
But anyway, so
yes.
Thank you for being there.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit, because your practice, all those different things that you said that you do, is huge. And we were talking a little bit about sleep deprivation. And I was telling you, even last night, I was with a group of girlfriends, and it is such a big issue now for so many people, especially I think after COVID. Yeah. But tell us how you got into it and how you made a decision to go that route. And I'm just curious about your practice a little bit, and how you reach so many people. So, and I know you're doing corporate stuff too, which I found very exciting
yes.
as an entrepreneur.
Yes.
So tell us just a little bit about how you got into it.
Yeah, so it started, I tell the story about I was 4 years old, and I was sitting on my couch. My mom told me this story, that I would line up my Barbies on the couch and ask them how they felt.
Oh,
so
okay.
I know. So apparently I was supposed to do this since early on, while other kids had the dream house going on, I'm asking them all how they felt. And so, years later,
I was styling them at that point.
See, that sounds way more fun. I don't remember what they were saying on the couch when I was 4, but I was asking them how they felt.
Yeah.
So what was sort of cool is that sort of became my life's passion, is just helping people. And so I went on, got my doctorate in psychology, and then had opened a practice, and my goal was really just to sort of walk with people in their darkness. That's what I always tell people, is that, we just sort of walk side by side. We each have a flashlight. And I say, mine, I'll just shine some stuff on ideas, maybe in different ways to think about things, until sort of yours starts, working again, and then you use yours, and I step away. So that's really sort of how I see it, is really just sort of shining the light on tools and strategies and things for people. So
is it that people? Is it mostly that people are stressed out so much that they can't get sleep, or or is it certain situations that come into their life, and then once the situation goes away, or what is it that you're seeing more of now?
Well, anytime people would come initially into our practice, and this was years ago, and we still ask these questions, but we would ask, how is your sleep? And it's one of the main symptoms that people always ask about, right? Do you sleep well? Has it been impacted? And we just kept noticing that sleep was an issue. And there was a Desmond Tutu quote that I had read years ago, and it said, as opposed to pulling people out of the river, why don't we go figure out why they're falling in the first place? And that was where drift came alive for me. It was sleep. Sleep was the thing that people kept falling into the river of, whether it was decreases in productivity or depression or anxiety or just stress management. That's where they were struggling. And so we see it in a few categories. So the main ones we see are people who can't shut their brains off at night. So I'm sure some people out there can relate to the fact that, you just can't control your thinking when you put your head on the pillow. And then some people, can fall asleep right away, but wake up, we call it the, 3 a.m. dreaded hour, which is like when everybody tends to wake up, or they just can't fall asleep at all. So we tend to see people in those three camps. And that's where drift came alive, was to really help people understand that you have to sort of construct your days differently in order to impact sleep at night.
Yeah, because you were saying, because I think so many of us, when we're thinking about sleeping, it's like, okay, I'm going to set up a routine, and that routine at night is going to help me get ready for sleeping. And you're saying no. So you're saying it's about the whole day, right?
Correct, absolutely. Yeah. So I know very little about football, so don't ask me a lot about football at all.
Make it up.
Yeah,
no,
exactly. But I do know that it has 4 quarters, and I know that my team doesn't win a lot, but that's hopefully turning around. But what I think about is
it
when
Go Bears?
Yeah,
Okay,
I
Go
love
Bears.
me some Bears.
Yes,
I know.
I know.
One of these
Chicago
days we've got
Bears,
it.
yes.
I know. And so, when it comes to sleep, that nighttime routine, right, calming down, setting up the structure, all of that, mattress, pillows, it's important.
Okay.
And that's like the 4th quarter. So you have to play that in order to win. And if you're not playing the first 3 quarters, you won't win. So I use this example of what I call a sleep balloon, which basically means that from the moment you wake up, you have to be filling the sleep balloon with these sleep chemicals that will then help you sleep at night. So you fill it up during the day as sort of tight and taut as you can, and then you use those at night, and then you fill them back up again. And so if we're not doing that, it doesn't matter how amazing our mattress is. It doesn't matter about our nighttime routine. We won't win if we don't play all 4 quarters.
And so you try to create something for that individual. Now, you're also doing corporations, though.
Yep.
So how does that work with corporations? Do you have to do a retreat with them? I mean, I would think it's a lot harder to do with a larger group of people.
Because some of the strategies are similar, you can teach them on a bigger scale, right?
Okay.
And so how I originally started going into corporations was seeing the cost that it cost companies for the people who, had poor sleep. So, there's 7.2 hours of productivity lost a week per person that don't sleep well. And so when you think about, for any organization or company, that you're paying individuals a certain amount of
that's
per
a
person.
Lot of money. That's a
week.
lot.
I mean, that's a lot.
That's
so,
a lot.
If you take 7.2 hours, multiply that by whatever you're paying, individuals, that's a lot of money, right? We see 85% higher insurance costs for, poor sleepers. We see 49% turnover rates. And so, as somebody who owns and runs a business as well, right, those numbers were shocking for me. And it came down, and this was just related to sleep and poor sleep, nothing else. And so when it comes to companies, it's really helping just their people understand it as well. So sometimes we'll do, retreats, we do workshops, we do things like that. And sometimes, it's just in a big group. I go in and, sort of teach it or do a keynote. And sometimes they want also structured meetings where then everybody customizes it for themselves as well. So specifically what's happening in their lives. And so whether it's individual or it's at a corporate level, the strategies are very similar.
You and I were talking a little bit about the fact that, and there's so many of these 5 a.m.ers, right? And I'm in business. I deal with a lot of other business owners, and I deal with a lot of business owners that are 5 a.m.ers.
Yes.
I am not like a 5 a.m.er. Like, as a matter of fact, I shared this with you. I've been offered even like TV programs in the morning to talk about different things or do different things. And I have had to say no, because when I've had to go on those TV programs, you have to get up, you have to be up at like 3 or 4. And then 5 a.m. you go on, and it's killed my whole day.
Yes.
And where normally I can take a nap, I can't even take a nap. And so I was asking you a little bit about the night watcher theory. I think you have another name for it, but the night watcher theory, as I've heard, is that there, thousands of years ago, there were all these tribes, and then people were in different categories of the tribes. Some of them were in the night watcher, where they had to be on the alert and be watching, for predators or lions, or, for whatever, might be affecting them. And then it ended up being embedded into their genetics.
Yeah.
And they married or, reproduced with other night watchers. And I think I must have come from that part of the tribe, because I, although I try to go to bed around 12 midnight or something like that, 1 o'clock, because I do get up around 7, which is not too bad, but I get very creative at night.
Yes.
And I write and I read, and some of my best work is done during that period. And I know a lot of other people like that, and I've stopped fighting it.
Yes.
How do you deal with that group? And it sounds to me that it's not so much about changing that, but that the time that you sleep is well slept, whatever
Yes.
time that works. So and if you do have to change it a little bit, like, how do you change it? How do you work toward it?
Yeah.
So that if you do have to do a week of being a 5 a.m.er, that you somehow are able to adjust. Is there an adjustment? And I don't know.
Yeah.
That's been a dilemma for
Yeah,
me.
I get
I
it.
stopped fighting it.
I get it. That's good. That's actually what we almost need to do. So, part of the theory is that we needed people awake at all times during the day to protect us, which makes sense, right? And so you had people who would stay up late at night, and you had people who had to be up early in the morning. And so there is sort of that theory that comes around that, like, this is embedded into our sort of our systems. So, there's morning larks and night owls. There's, a few other ones in there, but those are sort of the main ones. And really, it's sort of that circadian rhythm and that biological clock. And so people get very frustrated when you try to shift that too much. It goes against the natural rhythm of our clock. And so if you're somebody who is up until, noon or to midnight, and that's always been you, and you say, okay, and I want to be somebody who goes to bed at 9, it's just not going to feel good. You're going to be angry about it. You're not going to do your best work, right?
Yeah.
So, is there a way to shift it? Yes, right? So we can look at things like sunlight, and with the timing of sunlight to shift it a little bit. But to your point, it's like a slider, right? We can slide that time maybe back to maybe like an 11 or a 10:30, but to shift it back to somebody who's a 9 to 5 or is probably not going to be you. It's not me. I'm also sort of a night owl. Yeah. So, every now and then, can I shift it? Yes. But I also find that as long as you're keeping the routine consistent and you're getting quality sleep, that's what's important as well. So, the frustration, when we're frustrated and anxious, our sleep gets affected. So if you're trying to shift that back and it's increasing frustration and anxiety, it's going to work against your sleep anyway.
Okay.
So you're better off just sort of nudging it a little bit than, saying, okay, I'm now going to be this sort of person.
So setting up that routine and keeping that routine, that'll help you be healthier.
Yes.
Right? And then, so what are you recommending as far as amount of sleep?
So, we
Does
say
it differ
around
for different
7
people?
hours,
Okay.
is sort of, but the reality is people get so stuck on the hours, right? And then they get anxious about it, which then affects their sleep. So they'll be like, oh my gosh, well, I only got 6 hours, I only got 5 hours, and the reality is your body is made to sleep. It will sleep, right? And so part of what we have to understand is that if you've had a poor night's sleep, right? And now what we have to do is we've woken up the next day. We just have to let that one be in the past and not try to compensate for it. Because if so, we throw off that sleep balloon idea. So now I'm not focusing on building tonight's sleep balloon for a good night's sleep. I'm focusing on last night's, and it's already happened. So, if we get around 7 hours, that's great. And we want to keep that, but it's the quality of it. So the more anxious we get about hitting the time, the worse we sleep. So, you're, especially if people struggle with insomnia and they're laying there awake, they do what I call the alarm clock game, which is, okay, I went to bed at 12, and now, if I fall asleep right now, right? Like right now I get 7 hours of sleep, and then half an hour passes, and they're like, oh my gosh,
like,
right? Yeah, like now I only get 5 hours, and then a few hours pass, and it's like 3 hours, and then, they feel like their whole world's blowing up. Yeah. And so it's really hard to sleep when you feel your world's blowing up. Yeah. So you're better off just being like, okay, today may not have been my best night's sleep. I'm just going to focus on resting rather than like the ideal hours or the ideal quantity or quality of sleep.
Yeah. No, and I'm a napper. I can nap. Yeah. And I love my little naps if I know I'm going to have a really long night or I want to be really super refreshed for something that I'm going to, I'll take a nap. Yeah. But I have other friends that just can't do it. And so stop fighting it is what you're saying, right? If that's kind of the way your system works and you know your system well, then don't fight it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you and I had a conversation before about the analogy I use about naps being like cupcakes, right? And so, in and of itself, a cupcake isn't a bad thing, right?
Like
there's
cupcakes.
Nothing, I know, cupcakes. I like the frosting of a cupcake.
Yeah,
you can
me
take
too.
the cake. I just want the frosting. So it's that idea, though, of, if somebody's diabetic eats a cupcake and somebody not diabetic eats a cupcake, it affects their body very differently. Yeah. So when it comes to naps, if you have issues with sleep and you nap, it's going to negatively affect your sleep. If you're somebody who you're sleeping well and everything's fine and you take a nap like you and it's you're fine, then keep taking your naps. Yeah. I had shared with you earlier that one of the things I learned early on is like people get mad if they think you're going to take a nap from them, right? If it's like, no, don't come after my nap. Yeah. So I'm not coming after naps as long as you don't have sleep issues. If you do, I always recommend, that you maybe take a 20 to 30 minute and just sort of cut it off at that. If it's a, safety issue or anything like that, just because, you're building that balloon all day, your body doesn't understand like, oh, these are nap sleep chemicals, right? You're pulling from the same balloon, right? And so in doing that, if you take a 2-hour nap, it's just going to take a lot of time. And it may not even be possible.
2 hours, no.
I know. No. I couldn't even imagine.
No, that's long.
God, some people do, though. Some people can lay down and they can take a long nap. But, again, you just have to understand what it does to that balloon. Right, and then just sort of set that timer to maybe not do that.
Yeah, no, I do 20 minutes, half an hour.
Okay.
That's
perfect.
Like perfect for me. That works for me. So, I love it, and it sounds like there's more and more of a need of this. You're starting to see more and more. How long do you have to work with somebody, or is it sometimes ongoing that you have to kind of come back and check in? How does that work?
So for people who come who have true insomnia, who have had it for years, right, sometimes we have to really have them customize their plans for us, right? We ask them specific logs that they have to keep in terms of when they woke up, when they went to bed, sort of what their day looked like, any sort of diet changes, how many times they woke up during the night, any of those sort of things. So when it's a true insomnia case, we do sometimes have to go through really significant details with them. For a lot of us, it's just sort of like tweaks, right? We just need like tweaks to get our sleep back on track. Mm-hmm. And so once people understand that sort of the ideal situation is building that sleep balloon, and you build it through sensory stimulation. So the key one, if nobody remembers anything other than sunlight, it's sunlight, right? There's a part of our brain that's what it's looking for to start building those chemicals. And so, we want to make sure that we are getting sunlight, and when we're getting sunlight, and building those senses, right? What are we seeing? Are we moving?
So it's important to get a little bit of that during the day, every day, as much as possible.
Absolutely.
So what happens though, like Chicago, as we know, it gets a little cold and gray as wintertime comes. I know, right? No. We are not known as a sunshine state. No, I'm just saying. So what do you do? Then do you have to buy special lights or something? What do you recommend for people?
So I have a special light that you can get there, like called SAD lamps and stuff like that for seasonal affective disorder. That helps. Okay. The other thing too is, the sun is still coming through. It might be super dreary in Chicago, right? But there's still sun, right? It's still up there somewhere. So they tell us. It's up there. So, right, even if we just sort of go by a window, that's still going to get us sunlight. So if you're having meetings, just do them by where there's windows.
Okay.
Right? Because it's automatically actually helping you sleep better
Uh-huh.
without you even thinking about it, right? So those sort of things and those sensory stimulations, there's no reason that I can't be in Chicago standing up from my desk, moving around a little bit, right? I don't have necessarily, hours in between clients or workshops to go out and go for a run or any of those sort of things. But I do have time to stand up and stretch and take a few deep breaths and just move my eyes around.
Okay.
So it's those sort of things that we just have to incorporate in our days. And that's what creates us being able to sleep at night.
And about how much sunlight then?
As much as you can get.
Really?
Is great.
I mean, I do early walks.
Great.
I have a whole thing,
Yes.
meditate, and then I go out for a walk.
Fabulous.
Force myself to go to Starbucks, people.
Yes.
I run into all kinds of people in the morning. No
Love
makeup,
it.
nothing.
Yes.
God bless everybody who has to look at me. But it's that walk that does make my day. I think, and it stretches me out a little bit, and it's like really important apart from anything else. So I guess I'm getting a little sunlight even when it's gray.
Well, and not only sunlight, right, too, but you're also, when you think about the sensory parts, right, like all the things in your walk are also sensory without you even thinking about it, right? So the movement, right, is sensory. You have the smells, which is sensory. Like, you have the taste as you go into Starbucks with the sensory, right?
Yeah.
You have interactions, you have other people, all those sort of things. That's all sensory, right? So without even thinking about it, right, that your balloon has already started growing. Right. And so it's when we compensate and we forget about that and you say, okay, I'm going to sleep in or whatever it is and not take my walk in the morning. Well, now we don't get sunlight. We don't get, any stimulation in terms of smell or movement or taste or touch. And then that balloon shrinks. So love that. That's a perfect example of how even just those little things really cover all the senses all at once.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's
good job.
Yeah.
Keep it up.
That and my nap. Don't take away my nap.
I would never. I will never take away a nap.
Dr. Lemke, don't take away my nap. No, just kidding. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, I hear it from so many friends, but I think the biggest worry is that they're, not going to be a 5 a.m. or they're not going to fit in. So allow yourself to be who you have to be, right? And make the most out of what you have, it sounds like.
It's sort of yes and, right?
Okay.
Like if you're somebody who's going to bed at like 2 a.m.
Well, yeah.
Or 1 a.m. And some people are, right? Many people out there watching are like, I'm a 1 a.m. and 2 a.m.
I have a few of those in my
right.
office.
So that's not necessarily
I'm not going to say your names.
Right.
Anyway.
Right. We will keep them on the down low.
I don't even know how they keep up,
Yes.
how people function like that.
No.
Because that's a lot, because they're up in the morning.
Correct.
And then they have to go. So,
Right.
yeah.
And it's not, we do want sort of a little bit earlier in the day, if we can get in bed by that, 10, 11-ish hour, great. 12, I know you said, is a common one. You don't want to necessarily push it too far back from that.
Yeah.
So, yes, work within your system, but also, right, if you're somebody who's up at, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., you are probably doing things that are working against your sleep. So, either you're working and we don't need to be working at 1 o'clock at night, right? Or you're on a device or you're scrolling, and those are the things that we don't want to be doing.
Right. And so, but if people are getting their 7, 8, and then it kind of fits into their lifestyle, but if they're not, and they're not being healthy, what are some of the tell signs of that you're not being healthy? Like, what is it? Like, do you start losing your hair? Do you stomach aches? Do you not eating right? What other things does it affect when you don't have the right, sleeping patterns for yourself, that you're not getting enough sleep? Other than being super crabby, because I get crabby.
I get super irritable.
Yeah.
So I think about it. I'm going to date myself. I don't know if Jenga is still a thing that people play. Okay, so we're
looking at the young people that
are
recording this.
You're like, I don't know what Jenga is. You basically like stack up this thing and then it falls down on you. If
they said yes. So,
okay, good, perfect. So right, I think of sleep as how when that thing piles up and then you've got like the one at the base and you're about to like pull it, right, and everything falls over. That's, to me, what happens when you don't prioritize sleep. Everything falls over.
Yeah.
So how you see it is, physically, emotionally, and psychologically. You see it across all domains, right? So physically, you feel more sluggish, you feel more tired, you feel more fatigued, right? Typically, when you do that, then you're making poor health choices, like not working out, just eating things that, aren't healthy for you to be eating, just making those poor choices. And then you look at sort of emotionally, and you see the irritability, and you see the crabby, you see the sort of faster to respond. And also we misread other people's emotions quicker. So even when I consult with fire and police, that's a huge danger.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah,
Like, so
that would be
if
huge.
if I misread somebody's signs because I'm not sleeping well, that's a huge issue.
Right.
And then you also see it,
So your innate instinct gets thrown off.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and just everything becomes a little like, we don't typically misread it better, right? We don't go, oh, I bet they have the best intentions, right? It's typically, right, that sort of cloud starts covering our judgment. And psychologically as well, right? We're more sluggish, we don't think as well, we're less creative. And so you see that encompass all parts of somebody's life. So it's not just one. And so that's why I always say, like, that is not the piece to pull or to threaten, which is the sleep part, that you want that one steady so that the other parts can sort of stay as sturdy as possible.
Your practice is called Drift, right? Drift, is that what you got? Like, if somebody wants to find you, how do they find you? Tell us, how do they find you?
So my practice is Dr. Kimberly Lemke, PC.
Okay.
But my business for doing consulting and sleep workshops is Drift.
Is Drift.
Yes.
Okay. I want to get that clear.
Yes.
So, Kim, let's talk a little bit personal. Now
Okay.
I'm going to shift to the.
I'm ready.
So I'm curious, because you're dating now,
Yeah.
right? You're single and you're dating.
Yeah.
When you're looking for somebody, like, do you try to figure out if they get enough sleep? Like, how does that go?
That's a great question.
I'm curious
That is
on
a
how
great
that
question.
goes on the list of things that you look for.
Yes. You know how it actually shows up more so, and I had actually seen somebody else, another sleep doctor, post about this. So there's something called sleep apnea, right? Which is, where individuals stop being able to breathe at night, right? So they'll sort of gasp themselves awake and things like that.
They gasp when they snore, no? I would think they would snore.
Some people snore, some don't snore with sleep apnea,
okay.
but you'll just see this like gasp where it's like they wake up, so they're not being able to sleep, or if they've, if they're watching a movie or whatever it is, and they've fallen asleep, right, like they gasp themselves up. So we have this sort of joke, right, because it's like this undiagnosing sleep apnea, right, where I'll be like, have you been checked at all for sleep? And they're like, really? Like, that's what we're going to talk about? And I was like, yeah, because you have all the signs of it, right?
Wow.
Like, you should go get checked. So, I'm sure that's not what they want to hear in a conversation with me, but I always bring it up. I'm like, oh gosh, like, I think you have sleep apnea. And then when we do things, part of the things I look for is like, let's be active, right? Let's build that sleep balloon. So you and I had a conversation about, I love doing. Right?
Yeah.
I'm somebody who loves to go out and experience and have fun. I'm, 47, but like literally probably like 17.
Learn things, see things, right? Yeah.
I think 17 is generous. Probably more like 12 mentally. So like, I want to go out and like have fun and do things, and that helps me sleep, and that helps them sleep. And so it is.
And
all
that
in
a
it.
person that does that or is that way is probably going to sleep well too.
Absolutely.
Then. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Because they're also filling that sleep balloon, right? They're getting up, and the other thing too is we know poor sleep affects mood. And so,
oh God,
if they're very, if they're very crabby or negative, that's not gonna.
Honey,
go
did
real
you
well.
get enough sleep last night?
That's so true. Just asking.
Yeah, just asking. No, that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious if you're getting, because I'm hearing so many complaints now because of these dating apps.
Yes.
I'm not on them, as we've discussed.
Yeah.
But are you getting more and more people getting, more problems with lack of sleep because of them? Because I have some friends, they're on them all the time, and even right before they're going to go to bed, or they're dealing. I would think that causes a lot of anxiety, and
Yes.
that it brings. Are you getting people that are being affected by them and being affected by not getting the right kind of sleep? Curious about that.
Well, I think we see it not only on sort of that nighttime dating app swiping, right, but on really any of the sort of swiping, right, the Instagrams, the Facebooks, the TikToks, right, they're created to keep you there, right, like they don't want you sleeping, right, they want you awake, sort of, metabolizing the content.
So you start buying
yes.
stuff.
Right, you're like, oh, I definitely need that. I'll take 2 of those.
Yeah.
So not only do you like buy things that you shouldn't be buying late at night, but you're also just like, it keeps your brain awake, right? And whether it's, humor, or whether it's, things that are cute or funny, or any of that sort of stuff is just stimulating. And so when you're trying to go to bed at night, I used to say, don't be on your phone, but the reality is everybody's on their phone, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not like a puppy dogs and rainbows sort of therapist. Like I know what's real.
Yeah, you're
right?
being realistic,
like,
right?
100%. So
Right.
if you're swiping, right? Or, the problem with those apps too is that not only do you swipe, but then there's the comments that go back and forth, right? So is that when you start having a conversation at midnight with somebody new, right? And then now I've got to type, or they've got to type, or so I just encourage like those things happen when you're your best self, maybe, which is probably when you're a little better rested than late at night.
Clearer head, and
Yes.
yeah, including, like joking around, but no,
Yes.
it's true, because even, you see something and you're tired or you should be sleeping, and you're going to say yes.
Like, you just have more impulsivity.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can be as intentional. I'm a huge fan when it comes to dating of being intentional.
Yeah.
Right? Understand yourself. And as long as you understand yourself, you understand intentionally what you're then looking for. And when our sleep is compromised, it's very hard to be intentional. We just sort of impulsively, start swiping. So, I encourage people to do that when we have more capacity to be intentional.
It'll probably, keep you more properly focused and everything else. So, this is the Chic Innovator. So you're on the Chic Innovator. I'm curious a little bit about, do you have like a favorite accessory or favorites? How would you describe your style? Let's start with that, because you've got a very interesting, I think it's a very interesting life, right? You're speaking before corporations, or you're meeting one-on-one, and then your mom also, and then you have another personal life. So like, when you think of all of it, is there one style that you go to, or is there different things that you look at that create that comfort level in the way you look?
So I think a part of it in terms of my personal style is finding like those one or two things that really pop for me that I love, right? Like, one of the things that I have, my purple boots that I wear, and it just gives me a little bit of Papa style, and what I also...
She's got these fabulous burgundy boots
I
on.
think of
There,
fabulous.
that's like the color right now that's
Yes,
in. So
yes.
it's like, gives you that updated. I love them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's
I was
sort
trying
of
to
that-
get them off of her, but I couldn't. So.
You can definitely borrow them, and they're
They're so
comfortable.
cute.
And
Yeah,
they're comfortable,
yeah.
which is, and I think that's when it comes to sense of style, it has to be both for me,
Okay.
right? Like,
Yeah.
the reality is, right? I have 14-year-old twins. I have a daughter who looks at me and watches me, right? And so my sense of style has to be something that I could look at, that I have pride in, that I can feel comfortable in, and that I feel like celebrates my age as well. And that's what's important to me, is that sort of that authenticity and that confidence. And so I accessorize it. I lost my mom about 3 years ago. And so I love her pieces, right? It feels like I accessorize with her pieces, because
Such wonderful memories. Oh, that's
and it
so
keeps her with
wonderful.
me, right? She
Yes.
can be with me here,
Yeah.
whether it's through my necklaces or rings and things that were hers. And so
that's great.
those things provide me just peace and love and comfort. And
Yeah.
so I make sure to include that also into what I wear.
That's wonderful. And it has that connection that's still there.
Yes.
So as you know, this podcast is called The Chic Innovator, and I'm CEO of AAR Tech. Our give back is through a social enterprise, which you've been to, called Runway Latinx. And I know I'm the CEO and producer of that. And that's centered around fashion, gastronomy, mixology, and entertainment. One of our big events, which you've gone to, includes the local and international designers. As you know, we also have chefs, mixologies. And the big thing is that all of our proceeds go to Pivoting in Heels, which is a non-for-profit that's dedicated to empowering women. And we're very, very proud of that. My girlfriends brought to my attention the other day, they were like, you are so in being feminine. Like, I'm very comfortable with being feminine. And yet, the innovator part is a little bit more masculine, and I embrace both of them. But I love being a woman. I thoroughly enjoy that. I think our worlds, because we're in business, obviously, being feminine, we embrace it, at least, I do, and I love it. But yet at the same time, you have to step it up, and you have to, bring that masculine side without losing your feminine side. But a lot of times, too, that masculine side, has to be balanced out in what I do as well. So curious about your world and, how you handle some of that. Or if you have to, maybe you don't.
Yeah.
Maybe you
No,
don't.
I absolutely do. I can relate to everything you said. I'm over here nodding because I'm like, yes, to all of that, right?
Yeah.
When I go into corporations, or, I work with really large corporations, right? And there can absolutely be made comments, sometimes in the only female in the room, right? And so I think that a part of what you said is so true, right? Which is that you have to embrace both, but you do it from a place of grace, right? And that you can be able to have a conversation with somebody and be feminine, and at the same time be able to set limits and boundaries and be assertive, right? And I think that's where the sort of masculine energy comes in. I think earlier on in my career, right, being assertive was like, it's a no-no, right? Yeah. And now it's not that at all, right? It's really about, right, when I step into a room, I bring all my energy with me, and if you are somebody who's trying to minimize it, that reflects on you.
Yeah.
Right? You're trying to do that not because of me, but because there's something going on with you. And so I'm super uber focused on the fact that right now I have 14-year-old twins, a little girl and a little boy, and I'm so focused honestly on the message that I'm trying to send them. And so even when I'm doing anything online or on Instagrams or things like that, right? One of the things that other marketing companies are like, okay, we're going to have you use filters so that, you appear younger or you look this way, and I said, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm not. Like, I've earned every one of these wrinkles, and, not to say that, I don't have some creams that I use to try to help me. And at the same time, I've owned every wrinkle. And I feel like I've really talked to my daughter about owning who she is, and I feel like I have to model that. And so that's what holds me accountable in a lot of these meetings, is I am going to hold myself accountable for her as well, in terms of how do you be a strong woman, and when you need that sort of masculine energy as well, how does that show up in a way that can still have that sort of feminine component to it?
Yeah, and it's okay. All of it is okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
and you may fail. Sometimes you may falter. You may leave not feeling good about yourself. But again, I was talking to some of my girlfriends the other day, and it was like, when you don't feel good about yourself, when something happened that you thought you had it, and then you go back and you go like, I didn't handle that right. Just ask yourself the question, like, why do you feel so bad about it?
Yes.
It's okay. It's in the past now.
Yes.
Like, like making a mistake in your sleeping pattern.
Yes.
It's in the past now. So, but ask yourself, why is it bothering you so much? Deal with that and then kind of move forward on it.
Yes.
But all of it is okay.
Absolutely. I think all of it has strength. Right?
Yeah.
I think feminine energy has strength, masculine energy has strength. And I think we all need to sort of embrace that, right? And to your point, I mean, countless times I do it wrong, right? Like, I mean, where you're like, well, that didn't go, as planned. And so to your point, you reflect on it. But I think there's always a chance sometimes to do it again. And if you can't do it again with that person or that situation, when you find yourself with a similar person or a similar situation, then try to be that time, right? And so I think, too, that as situations come and go, if we take it and we say, okay, next time I feel this way, I want to do X, Y, or Z different.
Yes.
And then we do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and you try that, because none of us are perfect. That's why we're here. We're human, right? We're still working it all out. But I think that embracing your femininity, again, I love it, and I love projecting that as much as possible. One of the things, Kim, the reason we started Pivoting in Heels is, the Runway Latinx, the proceeds of it go to Pivoting in Heels, which is dedicated to empowering women and everything. You're saying about your daughter was because of my daughter. And she told me, she said, Mom, you know what? There's so many things that we as young women are getting hit with, drinking, the parties, the how do you study, how do you make the time, sleep deprivation. She said there's nothing digital out there where we can go and hear stories about how women that have already had to deal with some of this are dealing with. Like you should look at doing something, but in a non-for-profit way. So it was interesting, her idea, and so that's where it came out of. But you're right. All that we do, even especially also when you're a mom, you're not just doing it for yourself, right? But that you're leaving like a message out there with the way you act,
Yes.
the way you deal with things. But I can tell you that sharing it with your daughter, it will go a long way, because they do remember, and they do listen, and they do mirror
Yes.
a lot of what they see.
Yes.
You know, so kudos to you that
You
you're,
too.
you know, taking that into account, because I think it goes such a long, long way.
Well, and I think too, even like, you know, and I love that story, because you're right when we talk about like sort of the idea of like, okay, how they're being treated, or they thank God mine are 14, and when college comes, I'm going to be a wreck. So
Oh, yeah.
I'm just gonna, oh my
Yeah.
gosh. But I think the other component too, right, is for my son, right, to teach him how to also, right, treat a woman, right, and how to also sort of, you know, grow up in a way that he can embrace himself, right, with grace, love, and kindness, and at the same time show that, right. And
Yeah.
so I feel it's both, right. It's that idea of teaching her sort of how to find her voice, and even for my son as well, right. Like when I drop them off at school, right, I always stay just to make sure they get in the door, right. Part of it's because I'm paranoid, but you know, the other part is just I want to see how he interacts with the world.
You're on the corner looking.
I know, I totally am like the creepy mom, like, what is he doing? It's accurate, though.
Yeah.
It's exactly what I'm doing. Because I want to see, like, does he hold the door open, right? And every time, it makes my heart smile, because every time he does, whether he's holding it open for a teacher or for another female classmate or for a male classmate, it's just that idea of, right, how do I sort of show my own character and my own integrity as a boy as well? And so that is what I find important. And it's a hard balance, right? It's her and it's him, and right, I feel like I can relate a little bit more to her sometimes about, you know, the sort of the girl arena, right?
Yeah.
But also, you know, what is it that I would be looking for in somebody, right, that brings out the best in me?
Yeah.
And then trying to model that for him too.
That goes such a long way. It has such a long impact on the way people remember you.
Yes.
Basic kindness
Yes.
and respect.
Yes.
You know, just such a simple thing, but such an important thing. And again, that's one of those things that is both feminine and masculine,
Yes.
right? It's that balance there that I think all human beings should have. So I'm so glad you're doing
Absolutely.
that. Yeah, I
And
love
just,
it.
you know, I think COVID didn't help, right? I think about, you know, the fact that we all had to, you know, honestly, like, stay away from people, right? And so basic communication took a hit, right? Teaching our kids how to do it. And I'm trying to teach them also, like, how do you navigate in this world? Because you're going to have these sort of constant distractions regardless. And we talk about that when it comes to sleep. Like, I still have to work, right? I can't just focus on my sleep all day, right? When I just got back from an attorney retreat that I keynoted, to tell these people, like, here's the deal, forget a billable hour, you don't need it, right? Just, you know, go outside and focus on sleep. I mean, they'd laugh me right off the stage, right? So, but it's that idea of, like, how do you integrate these little parts into your day, whether it's for sort of growing grace, love, or kindness, right? Growing strength, you know, teaching connectedness and basically humanness. You can do that, like, in little moments in your day. It doesn't have to be, right, this big class that you teach. And kudos to you for, you know, starting the company and letting your daughter see that. And even her feeling safe enough to have a conversation with you about it.
Yeah.
You know, kudos to you for that.
Yeah. No, we're close. We're close. We're close, and I'm so happy and grateful for it.
Yeah.
But I'm so happy and grateful that you came in today. Thanks so much, you know, for being here and catching. We got to go out.
Yes,
like now.
100%.
Reconnected again. We got to go
Yes.
hang out. So I'll go out there if you come in here.
Love it.
Okay.
I would love it.
Come into Chicago, downtown.
I will do
We'll
it.
go
I
hang
will
out.
do it.
So how can people find you again?
So you can find me on Instagram, so at Dr. Kimberly Lemke, and I'm always giving away sleep tips and strategies that are real and in life and in the moment. You can also find me LinkedIn at Dr. Kimberly Lemke. You're going to see a theme here. Or you can also find me online. So driftcourse.com is the website, so feel free to go there. And we also have courses to help people sleep as well.
I love it. Thank you. So great. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so
You
much.
chic innovator. You.
Oh, appreciate it.
All right.